Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. This is Not Financial Advice Live, or NFA Live, coming to you every Thursday. Of course, this week's on my channel. We have at the top here, we have Guy from Coin Bureau, and on the bottom down there, we have Rob from Digital Asset News. So how are you guys doing today?
Great. How you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. How about you, Guy?
I'm good, thanks, Ben. Yeah, very well. Very well.
Yeah, so I thought we would just spend a little bit of time going through some of the recent developments in the cryptoverse. There's actually been quite a few, not only from the
Ooh,
sort of the SEC side and the regulation side, but also obviously the price has been doing relatively well recently. So what I want to do though is I want to go through a few different questions like normal, and then of course we'll take audience questions at the very end. But the first question we're going to talk about, and actually the first two questions are going to be more or less about the SEC and what are your thoughts about BUSD, the most recent target, and then also we know that Kraken is no longer offering staking as a service, and kind of get your thoughts about that, and sort of like what the response of the cryptoverse should be. Like, are we just supposed to just sit here like sitting ducks and just kind of wait to get picked off one by one, or what's the strategy there? We'll talk a little bit about inflation. That we had the most recent CPI report, of course. We'll talk about one thing that I know my audience would love to hear a contrarian view on would be the Bitcoin dominance, because I just hammer it into them. Pretty much only one view, and I think it'd be nice for them to hear something else than my view on that. And then I also like to just, I'm curious as to, what projects you guys have sort of been working on. If there's anything specific over the last year and a half. We know that these phases of the cycle are the best phases for building stuff, and getting onto that train, and just kind of curious like what you've been thinking, what you've been working on. So we'll go ahead and start. And the first question we'll start over. Let's go with Rob first. And Rob, basically, we have the SEC making moves against various sectors, right? I mean, it was just
yeah.
a week or two ago, it was Kraken. And, it was weird because they make it sound like it's a very simple fix, right? Oh, just go to the website and fill out a form, right? And like register. And it's like, okay, well, what does that really look like? And then, of course, we also have BUSD. Is this just the tip of the iceberg? Like, is this just, is there more to come? Or do you think this is just like sort of like a one-off thing, and that's kind of going to be it?
This is a tricky one because um, here's part of the problem. A lot of people, even myself included, will jump around to conclusions and go, "Well, it's Gary, it's bad," right? And of course, if it's exchanges, it's good. And then when you peel back the layers, you realize that there's a lot of minutia and a lot of things that are going on behind the scenes that make it a little bit of nuanced. I had Simon Dixon on the channel yesterday, and Simon Dixon is the founder of Bank of the Future. He's invested in some small startups like Bitfinex and Coinbase and Kraken and things like that. And he deals mostly in securities. And I asked him a question point blank. I said, look, I feel like, and Gary came out, and first of all, can we give a little props to Gary Gensler and his production team for those fantastic videos that they put out? I got to tell you, that's not Gary's idea. That is a pretty great way to sucker in people and be like, we're good, we're fine. And it's actually a nice thing. That's to get like the normies to go, oh, that's a good guy. I like what he's doing. But I asked him, I said, look, he's come up on Squawk Boss and said, look, it's very simple, like you said, Ben. All we got to do is just go to the website and fill out a form. Very simple. And then Jesse Powell came out on Twitter and go, wow, if I just would have known that I had to fill out a form, I wouldn't have lost $30 million in fines and be banned from doing any kind of staking in the future. I feel so stupid now. I should have just done that. So I asked Simon, I go, who's lying? Which was the question. Who's lying to our faces? And he said, in all honesty, he goes, no one's really lying. He goes, they're both saying the right things, and they're both saying the truths, but they're leaving out some different points. And he says, one of those things is that he said, when he got into it and the securities, they would register a lot of different products. And he said, you have to understand, like if you're doing some kind of earn or APY or something like that, that's a security. And he goes, and you have to register with it. The problem is with these different exchanges is that when they do that, they're not used to that. They're used to moving at light speed and offering these things just going there. And to onboard these types of things, it's very difficult. He says, so And he talked about Coinbase and how they did a special power broker dealer. And they said they actually have that. They bought it from us. The thing is, they're not doing those things. They're not putting those disclosures. He said, and the reason is because it slows down everything for accredited investors, especially in America. On the flip side of that, he said, we're doing a lot of things with the SEC, and we're trying to do these special broker dealers and move forward with securities. And we've put in the paperwork as numerous other ones have done themselves. And he goes, and guess what? After spending, months up to a couple, year and a half, and other places, they're not approving them. He goes, so when Gary says it's very simple, he's not telling the whole truth. And when these exchanges are saying, we just don't know what to do, is like, they do know what to do, but they're not going to get approved. So what's the point in general? So really what it comes down to is, it's a long answer.
This is really interesting, actually. Keep going.
Yeah. So like what's really interesting is what do they consider as like an actual security? And there's like, people will say 3 prongs, or I see it like 4 prongs. Investment of money, common enterprise, expectation of profit derived from the efforts of others. So when you take a look at BUSD, you say, well, how the heck does that happen? Because it's a stable coin. There's no expectation of profits. And if you take a look at the Binance website, it'll say, look, a well-designed stable coin should be backed by cash and other derivatives, other things like short-term U.S. treasuries, fewer than 90 days, treasuries, right? Which would not be considered a security in certain ways. And they even have like a monthly reserve attestation form, and you can find it right there. The problem is that, and this was a legal argument, and this was put out by Adam Cochran. He's not a lawyer himself, but he works in synthetics and things. He says, look, the assets that hold the underlying treasuries makes them a lot like a money market fund, exposing holders to a security, even if they don't earn from it. It's a legal argument, and it's not, like super like going to be in stone. He goes, but you can make the argument that because it is backed by these money markets, which would be like a treasury, that you are exposed to securities, and that's their back door. And then lastly, I asked Simon, I go, so what's the deal, man? Because it seems like they're trying to get rid of these stable coins and move forward. And he said, yeah, he goes, here's the thing, is that people always assume that Bitcoin would be the big disruptor and the government wants to get rid of Bitcoin. He goes, in all honesty, and we'll talk about this as far as like for the dominance. He says the governments, they've already said Bitcoin's a commodity. I don't think they can get rid of it. And what they would like to do is get rid of stable coins, because what do they compete with is the CBDCs, which makes a lot of sense. So how are they going to do that? They're going to go against the BUSD, especially with Binance. But what is interesting, and I'll leave this leave it to Guy, is that they went after BUSD money markets and the things that are backed by that. But I believe that Circle and USDC is the exact same thing. So the question then becomes, why not go after Circle and USDC and go after BUSD? So there's the longest answer you can possibly get.
No, I think that's really interesting. And who did you say you were talking to about that? Simon?
Simon Dixon. He's like I said, Bank to the Future. He was like one of the very first Bitcoin OGs, and he runs Bank to the Future, which is all about securities, investing into the Coinbases, the Krakens, the Bitfinex, and a host of other, even Robinhood. And that's a huge portfolio. But again, they deal with mostly securities, and they're the ones that help bail in, I guess, Bitfinex when they had that huge hack. And that's what he was trying to do with Celsius, but that's a whole other video.
No, I think that was a really great, well-rounded and researched answer. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Guy, what do you think? do you have anything to add to that? Is it sort of the tip of the iceberg here for some of these regulations or on stable coins and like the staking as a service? Kraken's surely not the only exchange they could go after there. What do you think?
Yeah, gosh, it's there's not an awful lot I can add to that answer from Rob. It was so comprehensive, so interesting as well. I think, picking up from your last point, Rob, about how they've gone after BUSD and not USDC, even though Circle seems ostensibly to have the same kind of deal going on. What I found quite interesting was that they didn't, because they're going after Paxos, BUSD via Paxos, they didn't go after USDP, which is obviously Paxos's own in-house stablecoin. And that, to me, suggests that certainly at this stage, this is an attack on Binance, as albeit sort of indirectly, but this seems to be, the way I read it, the best way the SEC can get at Binance, obviously because Binance doesn't have, apart from Binance US, there's no really other way really to attack it. So that was my reading of the situation as far as the stablecoin issue goes. And of course, are we likely to see more of this sort of thing? I mean, yeah, as you say, I think there's a decent chance that they could choose to go after Circle and USDC. Something that's been kind of nagging at me since late last year really was the fact that Circle was kind of all set to go public. And then kind of pulled that back. And I've been wondering ever since what that was about. I mean, I think Jeremy Allaire basically said, well, this didn't feel like the time. We're in the midst of a bear market, FTX, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. But I do wonder whether there was pressure behind the scenes to withdraw that public application. So who knows? But I think there is definitely a chance that Circle might be next. I think we've got to at least pay lip service to the fact that there is perhaps a chance that they could seek to go after Tether. Obviously, this revelation that Tether's, is it about $40 billion of their reserves are being managed by Cantor Fitzgerald in the US? I mean, that seems like a point of vulnerability for Tether. And I mean, I don't want to go too far down the Tether FUD path, because I know that kind of always comes up, and Tether has held firm through all these years. So I'm reluctant to sort of chase that point too far. But yeah, certainly going back to the fact that it's Paxos but not USDP, it does strike me that this is against Binance to start with. But I don't see why they wouldn't expand it perhaps to more stable coins in the future. And yeah, I mean, it's so interesting, Rob, what you were saying as well about the fact that neither Jesse Powell nor Gary Gensler were perhaps being, entirely forthcoming with everything. It just shows, doesn't it? There's always kind of two sides to a story, and perhaps we're always so quick to just jump to the defense of people we see as on our side. So it's obviously a lot more nuanced, I think, than perhaps we're often willing to give it credit for. But I mean, it really points to me how there just is such a, that these two viewpoints can be butting up against each other, but it just points to such a mess, and that surely is the SEC's job to sort that out. I feel, again, it comes down to this issue of regulatory clarity, doesn't it? If you don't have clarity, then situations like this are gonna keep occurring. So again, that's a fairly long. I think as well, Rob. You give Gary far too much credit for that video. I was amazed that I counted 4 times. 4 times that he managed to do the steak and steak gag, which I mean, I think 1 was an affront to common decency, but 4 is just is too much.
I thought that was a bit over the top as well.
Right at the top, yeah. In terms of okay, let's so I mean, leaving stablecoins aside, I think as far as this idea of staking as a service goes, Jesse Powell sort of claiming that they went after Kraken. He put out another tweet. I think he was obviously tweeting quite a lot around that time, saying that, well, they went after us because they knew we'd just laid off 30% of people. They knew our financials, and we looked weak, so they picked us off. And there may be an element of truth to that, I think. But obviously, the next target is Coinbase, which, again, there's a good argument to say that Coinbase has a lot more in the way of resources to fight the SEC if they come knocking over that. But my question is, if they're gonna crack down on one US exchange offering this service, why would they not go after others? Why would Coinbase not be next?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can think is that, Coinbase is a publicly traded company, so it seems like they would have already had to have jumped through a bit more hoops to get to where they are. But you're right. I mean, and that kind of is leads us into the next question. I mean, like, is the cryptoverse as a whole, just supposed to just sit around and like sitting ducks, just waiting to get picked off one by one, or at some point, I think I saw Rob talking a little bit about this maybe on Twitter or somewhere. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're right.
Yeah, but like, and Guy, I'll go to you first on this, Guy. But I mean, what do you think? We just sit here, wait to get picked off by the SEC one by one, or at what point does the cryptoverse sort of unite and go on offense against the SEC and say enough is enough? Like either provide a path to for us to follow these regulations or leave us alone.
Yeah, I felt towards, I think it was sort of getting towards the end of last year, maybe before FTX, the sort of FTX tsunami came and engulfed us all. I had this sense that the crypto industry in the States was kind of really pulling together quite well. You had Coinbase kind of coming in on Ripple's side in its case against the SEC. There seemed to be some really concerted lobbying from the crypto industry on Capitol Hill, and it did look like, certainly from where I was standing, that there seemed to be this cohesion. There seemed to be this pushback and this call for a voice in the process of drafting these regulations, and that seemed to be going somewhere. And then, of course, we had this whole FTX thing come along, and I think I get the impression that has left a really bad taste in the mouths of people on Capitol Hill, and I think perhaps that could be one of the biggest setbacks that the whole thing has done to the industry. It's destroyed, to a large extent, the relationships that had been built up between the crypto industry and people on Capitol Hill, U.S. politicians and so forth, who seem to be having constructive dialogue, and now I think there's been a whole lack of trust because just how deep this FTX scandal goes. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's certainly made it very, very difficult. And I mean, there's still this sense, isn't there? And again, I get where Jesse Powell is coming from, and this is like, on the one hand, you feel that, okay, perhaps these crypto projects and companies and what have you should engage with the SEC more, should say, okay, whereabouts on your website are these forms exactly? We don't see them. But then you have these instances of companies approaching the SEC, and the SEC's reaction is to just push back. There doesn't seem to be much of a sense of cooperation going on there. So I can't really blame a lot of crypto companies for sort of keeping their heads down and hoping that the SEC doesn't really notice or is kind of too busy trying to squash someone else. So yeah. I think it basically, in the last few months, the situation for tackling that in the States has become a lot more difficult. And again, we know who to blame for that to a large extent.
Yeah, and Rob, I mean, I'd be lying, Rob, if I didn't say it wasn't your tweet that inspired this question. I mean, I was kind of curious. What are you thinking? Because you're right. Like, at what point do we sort of push for something, something a bit more concrete?
Well, I mean, I just thought about what Guy said, which makes a lot of sense. Is that the exchanges just put their heads down. I'm like, okay, I'm just doing my job. Just don't bother me. I just want to get through this. I'm in a bear market. We're down 70, 80%. We just had to lay off staff. I don't want to deal with this because I just want to make it to the next bull run and not get wiped out and become insolvent. So just leave me alone. I'm tired. That's what I think part of it is. But then, like, yeah, that tweet that I put out, I was pretty much just saying we should sue the SEC. And I quoted Benjamin Franklin. We either hang together or we're going to hang separately. And there's strength in numbers. So I said, look, I mean, if we wait for them to pick us off, it's going to be easy pickings. And that's just really how it is. But I mean, do they have the gumption to do it? Well, I mean, Brian Armstrong came out and said, look, if we want us to defend this in court, we'll do so. And then Paxos came out and said, look, if you're going to sue us and tell us to stop, we're going to defend this in court as well. So if you have those two juggernauts doing the things, why don't they all just band together and go, look, let's just bring a suit against the SEC and go, we want clarity. We don't want super regulation. Let me make clear of that. I don't want everything to get shut down. I just tell us what is a commodity and what is a currency and what is a security and just go from there. So like that was the thesis of moving forward. But I will say that we already did part of this. Well, we didn't do it, but over in the EU, and this is why I'm glad Guy is here to give us some perspective. Because Guy, remember MiCA, markets and crypto asset legislation? So that came out, and they were essentially going, we're going to ban Bitcoin. And I think if there was no voice and we weren't engaging and we weren't speaking up, I mean, the crypto community, they probably would have done it. But the reason that they didn't is because they spoke up. So Guy, how can we do what you guys did to not get screwed over, essentially?
Well, it's a good question. I think as well, it's something that I didn't really consider at the time when that second draft of MiCA came out, and it was suddenly like, wow, this is so much better. This is such an improvement. I think obviously we had the Inflation Reduction Act come out in the United States, and I think this has left. I think this has done some real damage to relations between the EU and the States, because, you know, especially the focus on renewable energy. A lot of talent has been lured away from the EU, from the UK as well. Yeah. A lot of talent in that field has been lured away, and it wouldn't surprise me at all because remember as well, not only do we have these quite promising looking set of regulations in the EU, but the UK as well has just drafted some pretty decent ones. I mean, there's certainly room for improvement, but it's a huge leap forward. And I do wonder whether this is kind of pushback against the Inflation Reduction Act, against these efforts by the Biden administration to sort of lure all this talent from one particular industry, and they're going, okay, if you're going to take our renewable energy people, we're gonna make this somewhere where your crypto people can come and set up and you know, get the benefits of some clear-sighted regulation from. So I do wonder whether that's been a sense, but yeah, it's a huge opportunity for places like the EU and the UK and others to kind of steal a march on the US.
Exactly.
But yeah, in answer to your question, Rob, what can the US do? That's more of a tricky one, I guess. And I think really other than companies in the US relocate to the UK and Europe, or the crypto industry come together and fight it, I don't see the lead coming from under the current administration. So other than wait for the 2024 election and see what happens then, I'm not sure what the answer to that is. I just don't see anything changing under this current regime in the States.
Yeah, and just to follow up, this regime's not going to change. I think what helped over there with you guys, I think it was representation. There was Bitcoin miners, there was, you know, people in the industry go, look, if you screw this up, this is what's going to happen. You can do that, but we're going to be out, and it's just going to move. It's just going to be like a deflating balloon. It's, you know, whatever happens, we deflate, it fills up over here. America deflates, it fills up over there. I think that's the only thing moving forward. I feel that's how we could do it, but a lot of people in the crypto industry is like, we don't need regulations, so we'll just stop talking about them. I think if we stop talking about them, that's when we really get screwed.
These are great answers. Yeah. I mean, it's always interesting because I feel like recently the SEC has been going into overdrive in some degree, like, you know, just going after one project, then another, and you know, I just wonder how much longer they're going to do this for. And you're right. I mean, like, you know, to some degree, I know some of the exchanges just sort of sit down with their head down and try to do what they can, and then I mean, if they have to pay a fine, they have to pay a fine. But I guess there's got to be more clarity at some point, right? For us for the industry to grow into what we want it to become, there at least has to be clarity as to what everything is. Which brings me to my next point, and you know, this is honestly probably the most polarizing view that I have is especially over the last year, is that, you know, before we can really get into a real alt season or anything like that, we need the dominance of Bitcoin to go higher. And I find myself, constantly debating with people about, well, this altcoin's up 30% or something, so the dominance is wrong, right, or something like that. But remember, the alt seasons that we're looking for are these are the rallies where we saw Ethereum go from $80 to $4,800, right, or Cardano from 2 cents to $3. It's not a 50% move in one direction. It's those massive, this is a new paradigm shift type of move in the cryptoverse. And so, I know it's a polarizing view, but I'm curious if you guys maybe could offer a different view on it, just because I know there's a lot of people who disagree with me, and I'm just curious, what do you guys think? Is the Bitcoin dominance narrative, of it continuing to soar for months to come, is that sort of dead in the water, and it's no longer going to go back to the glory days that it once was? Or do you see that narrative ultimately playing out? Rob, I'm gonna start with you.
Zed, it's a great question, and it's one of the things that I look towards, and I'm hoping. I have to be honest with everybody. I hope that Bitcoin dominance increases because I own a lot of Bitcoin. But when I take a look at the history itself, I mean, you can go to coinmarketcap.com/historical and just take a look at numbers 1 through 10 and start from 2013, I think it starts, to all the way to today. You'll see that in the top 10, they're all gone. I mean, for the most part, you'll still see the XRPs and the Ethereums and things like that, but it always went back to Bitcoin. So do I think that we have to see Bitcoin dominance? I mean, it'd be nice for my portfolio. It'd be nice to kind of give a nice, clear indicator and move forward, but I don't know if it is. I think the bigger question is, well, there's two things. The bigger question is, do other cryptos have enough utility to take the part that makes Bitcoin so great and then pull it into their market cap, and then so that Bitcoin can have the 50%? Are smart contracts and digital IDs and NFTs and oracles and all those things, is that enough to pull it off of Bitcoin? I don't know. I don't know if it really has it right there. But I will say that do we have to have Bitcoin dominance go up? We don't have to. I mean, look, we just saw in the last 2 months or so how things have gone. And I've been dollar cost averaging micro, and I switched over to regular, just my same old simple dollar cost average, and things are going well. However, the thing we just talked about with regulation, things like that, if the SEC comes out and they go heavy and hard, because remember, Gary screwed up a lot, and I think that hinders him. He missed FTX, he missed Voyager, he missed Celsius, he missed BlockFi. That's not a guy who's a lifer, who's going to take that line down. He's going to go heavy. And I think as time goes on, if he starts to say, this is security, this is security, security, what will that affect for altcoins? Whether you believe in dominance or not, guess what's not going to be a security? It's going to be Bitcoin, right? Because they've already said Bitcoin is a commodity. Jay Clayton said that. Gary Gensler said that. I think even Yellen said that. So do I think that, first of all, do I think we have to have a dominance? No, I don't think we have to have a dominance, but I think if those things happen, it's going to be heavy. So for me, not financial advice, I would be ready for that in your portfolio.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's interesting. So, I mean, it sounds like you're a lot more flexible on it, which is probably the better way to be completely honest.
Well, Ben, you're like, I'm telling you, yeah. And it'll probably pull out, but I don't know.
We'll see. Well, I mean, the argument is I reserve the right to buy altcoins later with Bitcoin, because the argument is that they're mostly going to all devalue against Bitcoin. Even, that's what we've at least seen in the past. And Guy, I'd like to hear your opinion, because one of the few cryptocurrencies, there's a few that have held up against Bitcoin. We know that. I mean, like Ethereum, and the reason why I say that is because I know Guy is heavy on Ethereum. I think a bit more on than on Bitcoin. There's some other altcoins that have done well. I think Matic's Bitcoin valuation has more or less just been within a channel for like a year and a half, and it hasn't really gone much lower than where it was a year and a half ago. So, Guy, what do you think? I mean, is the dominance narrative a bit overblown? Am I living in the Stone Age? Is it a boomer view? What do you think?
Overview. Nice.
Ben, for the record, I don't think you're living in the Stone Age. No, not at all. Yeah, I think. Well, I think there's one. Before I talk about anything else, I think there's one particular crypto that we're kind of missing out from this discussion, or should I say, one particular class,
Yeah.
and that's stablecoins. Because I think, I think we talk about ETH eating up a lot, eating into Bitcoin's dominance, and as you say, Ben, I hold a lot of ETH, and I think people are always asking me whether ETH will eventually one day flip BTC, and I think there is a good chance that could happen, but I don't think we talk about stable coins enough. Obviously, this is very much in the context of what we were talking about earlier, and obviously this is a pretty dicey time for stable coins as well. But I think a lot of people are, you just have to look at the market cap of Tether, the market cap of USDC and BUSD, especially before its kind of current trouble started. There is a lot of money sitting in stable coins, and I think that can certainly account for, take some dominance away from Bitcoin. And yeah, I think but going back to what you were saying, Rob, I think that idea, that narrative of Bitcoin as a commodity is going to be so important. The more volatile markets get, the more unpredictable and rage fueled that Gary Gensler gets, the safer Bitcoin looks. So do I think we'll see Bitcoin dominance kind of return to levels it's been at in the past? No, personally not. And again, that's because of ETH, and also in large part because of stablecoins. But I think we're still going to see a lot of money held, a lot of the liquidity held in Bitcoin in the markets for some time. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Good. I mean, I appreciate those views, and we'll see how it shakes out. The thing with the stable coins, I'm curious because with the regulation, I there is part of me that wonders if the current rally is being fueled by people trying to get out of stables and into Bitcoin, because of uncertainty around the stablecoin market. I don't really know. But yeah, I mean, I think those are valid points. The stablecoin market makes up a considerable portion of the market cap, and it did not make that up if you go back, a few years ago.
True.
So it's always worthwhile to, I think, point that out. So thanks for remembering about that. The next thing I think we should talk about is we get these reports, right, and every inflation report is the most important inflation report ever until the next one, right? So we had a new one, and I mean, it's still technically disinflation, right? I mean, I know it came in above consensus. I have to ask myself, what's the point of these consensus views anyways? I mean, the trend is probably what matters more than anything, I guess. But what do you think about this inflation narrative? Because there's two narratives out there, right? I mean, and it's hard to know which one has more credibility, and it's hard to know, like, is it going to be sort of a mixture of the two? And the two camps are essentially inflation, the economy is very, very strong, and inflation's about to reaccelerate because the Fed took they took the foot off the brakes, they took the foot off, too soon, right? They did it too soon, and now the economy is starting to reaccelerate, and that's going to lead to the resurgence of inflation. So that's one view. But then you have another view that is sort of the opposite. It's like, well, look at all the layoffs happening, look at some of the other things that we're seeing, and is this a sign that the economy is slowing down, and perhaps inflation is just continuing to go down? So I guess the question really is do you think this most recent data point, where it only, where core CPI and headline CPI, it only went down a little bit, do you think that's showing that it's starting to trend back the other way, or do you think it's just a fluke and inflation's going to be down a lot more next month? Guy, I'll start with you on this.
I think it's interesting that that there is talk now. A lot of people are saying the words soft landing. And I think that points to the fact that the Fed, it seems at the moment, to be doing a pretty good job. with inflation. It is bringing it down. It's sticking to its narrative that it is going to see the course. And I mean, the markets seem to be kind of objectively ignoring a lot of the bearish data out there, and kind of trying to call Jerome's bluff whenever he makes one of his press conferences and announces another rate rise. But I don't think that can take away from the fact that there is talk of maybe, just maybe, a soft landing will be pulled off. I still think it's going to be pretty tight. But to me, from where I'm standing, the Fed does seem to have the upper hand on it at the moment, and that suggests to me that inflation is going to keep coming down because the Fed seems to have charted a good course. It seems prepared to stick to that. Obviously, we now have to we await one load of CPI data, and now we have to wait for another jobs report and all this sort of stuff. So we just kind of live from one data point to the next. But at the moment, it looks to me as though the Fed seems to have this in hand. So I can see the disinflationary process continuing. I'm not sure whether it will be as quick as people would like. I think it is going to be probably a much slower process than perhaps markets are pricing in. But we do seem to be on that downward leg now.
Yeah, it's also because if you look at like the Fed funds rate, markets are calling for cuts by the end of the year. But it's like, why would the market call for a cut if Powell said they're not going to cut? Well, it's because I guess they think the economy is going to take a hit. Rob, what do you think? I mean, are you seeing any signs of inflation coming back, or do you think it's just slowly we're gonna be continuing to be sort of in this disinflationary process for a while?
No, eggs are $4.99 a dozen. I'm feeling pretty good. That's my answer. No, but
one egg equals one egg, right?
Yeah, well, that's right. It's going down. It used to be $7.99. Now it's $4.99. It's great. No, Guy had a great answer. It makes sense. I will say this. Remember that question that we had? If you had 5 people to invite over as a dinner guest,
right?
And then my answer, I had Mashinsky and the Three Arrows Capital guys and Do Kwon and whoever the other scamster was. But I think someone said, I think it was you, Ben, he said, isn't it amazing what a year difference makes? A year ago, we were talking about Jerome Powell as the biggest moron on the planet for potentially raising all these rates. And how could he do it? He's not going to do it. He's a coward. And of course, one, he stuck to his guns and he did it. And now when we are ridiculing him for a soft landing, now everybody's talking about this soft landing. So it always concerns me when everybody starts to talk about it in unison. I'm like, I don't know if this is going to happen. But if it does, I mean, so much the better. But if we take a look at inflation and what causes inflation, one of the biggest factors is quantitative easing and money printing. And that's not going to happen anytime soon. And those rates aren't going to get cut. I don't care what kind of proponent's going to say it. Those rates they're either going to go up the rest of this year, or they're just going to stay at the same time. So unless something happens with supply chains, which get destroyed, and we can't get anything over here, which would raise the demand of certain service or goods, then I'm hoping that inflation does stay high. But I never thought of it that way, what you said, Ben, about how it kind of ticked down. It's still disinflation, but not for the expectations. But I think it'd be the next thing would see where we at next month and go from there. I personally, I'm hoping things go a little bit wonky so I can keep dollar cost averaging.
Yeah, it was the rates that the rate of change really slowed down a lot, and now it's like, well, is it going to be like what it was a few months ago, or is it going to be like it was last year, where then it starts to go back up for a few months?
Yeah, it's a good one.
And I've seen so many people with different views, and it's funny talking about the hard landing and soft landing stuff, because it's like within essentially the span of 3 months, we went from hard landing to soft landing to no landing to rocket emojis. Like, I mean, it literally just went from like one
emojis.
Yeah, like it went from like one end of the spectrum to the other. And, I mean, again, within the context of history, the Fed is normally not that successful in achieving a soft landing. It's what history shows us. It doesn't mean it can't happen. I think there have been a couple of times where where essentially a soft landing was arguably achieved. So it is possible. but it is interesting because we always go through the phase of figuring out, is it going to be a soft landing or not. And I think that's kind of where we are right now, right? People are, some people are speculating that it will be, some people think that it won't be. But the last question I want to ask you guys before we get to some of the audience questions. So if you do have a question for any of us up here, make sure you ask it in the chat. But the last question, Guy, and I'll start with you first here, is what have you been working on for the last year or so? Because one of the things that we've said before is, when prices are relatively flat for a long time, obviously last year was a bear market. They say bear markets are meant for building. Even the year after bear markets, like 2015, 2019, still really great building years, generally speaking. So you could argue 2023 is the same. Is there anything specific you've been working on, or anything new you've been thinking about doing? Yeah.
I've got a sneaking suspicion that the rest of the team here are working on replacing me with an AI, but I don't have any proof for that at the moment. Just kind of people whispering in corners. No, yeah, we've been working on a few things here. I think obviously the first one is the event we've got coming up in June back in London. We've got this kind of Macy full time on that. We'd love to do more of those, because I think even in a bear market, it's great for people in the crypto community to be able to get together and listen to people in the space, in the flesh, as it were. But also, what I felt was so good about the last time we had an event was for people in the community to be able to meet each other. Because that's a bit of a Freudian slip, wasn't it? To be able to kind of meet each other, because I think crypto can be a bit of a lonely life sometimes. You're stuck in front of a computer looking at charts and crypto. You've only got crypto Twitter for company. So short answer is we've been working on that event and hopefully more. There's also quite a crypto community here in Dubai that we'd like to engage more with and maybe do meetups for those too. So that's one thing. We're also thinking we're kind of not sure on this one at all, but we're thinking maybe of launching a technical analysis channel as well. That's something that we think there may be a market for. Obviously, there are some guys out there in the crypto space who do it very, very well. But we do know some very talented people in that respect as well. So we're thinking about that, and we're also thinking in general. We've been having discussions that sort of we haven't alighted on any firm conclusion yet, but we've been having discussions about how we can, in effect, kind of circle back to some of the stuff that we used to do, and by that I mean covering kind of more altcoins, more smaller projects, because I feel at the moment we're sort of in this position where we'd like to cover smaller projects. We'd like to kind of dive into niches a bit, but it can be, we found in the past, it can be, a bit counterproductive. You give exposure to a small project and it can be sort of too much too soon. And we don't want to run the risk of kind of overexposing projects before they're sort of ready to hit the market. So we're kind of looking at ways that we can maybe circle back to some of the things that we started doing, because obviously we have a lot of focus on macro stuff now, which I really enjoy doing, and I also think is so relevant. I mean, we've spent so much of this particular stream talking about it, and it is so relevant to everything going on in crypto. And I want to keep doing that, but I do want to go back to our roots here a bit as well and start covering obscure cryptos and looking at projects that are really, really interesting, but also quite small and undiscovered. Because I mean, that's part of the fun, isn't it? So just thinking how we can do that and do that in a responsible way. We're also relaunching our website soon as well. We've got a brand shiny new website being built. So I'm excited about that too, because I think that's I've seen some screenshots of how that's going to look, and it's going to be brilliant. So yeah, I think all things considered, we're sort of taking Rob's Build-A-Bear philosophy to heart, or at least we're trying to. But yeah, we are working on quite a few things.
Yeah, it sounds like your hands are quite full over there. That's a lot.
That's
No,
a
but
lot of stuff, guy.
no, but I mean, it's great.
I was like, yeah, I'm doing it all, baby.
It is a good point about like
Just, you know.
the sort of the micro caps, you know, because it's like that's initially when a lot of us first get into crypto, you're sort of attracted to the smaller market cap coins because they can give you a lot more upside in a bull market. It can also get you wrecked in a bear market, right?
Yes.
But they can give you a lot more upside in a bull market. But then you sort of, if you start a channel, right, and it grows and you have, you know, hundreds of thousands of subscribers, you're like guy over here who's what, 2 million or something. How many? I don't. It's a lot. It's like, you know, I think everyone subscribed to me and Rob. They're definitely subscribed to Guy, but not everyone subscribed to Guy is subscribed to me and Rob.
This is true.
Yeah. No, but I mean, it's
Well,
one
they should be.
But
Or
it's
should.
one of
There
those.
you go.
It's
There
one
it
of those
is. Yeah,
things where
nice.
you don't want to you know, you run the risk of like if you promote a smaller market cap coin, you know, like as you said, like, you know, there's some level of responsibility of trying to figure out, like, you know, can I talk about this? Can I not talk about it? You know, how do we navigate that? But yeah, Rob, what do you think? I mean, have you been anything specific you've been working on over the last year and a half or so that you think people should know about?
No, well, first of all, with the thing with Guy and that, like, it sounds like an incubator type of program, which is pretty cool. Like, you can talk to these projects and go, okay, well, here's our criteria for what we think is good, and if you don't do this, then you're out. That's pretty cool, because a lot of times we talk about a project on our channel, like I think it's going to do well, but we don't really look really deep. That's it. I will watch that show, Guy. That's for sure. The TA stuff, no, I won't. But the other stuff sounds good. So for me and my channel, we did a couple of things. And Guy kicked it off there. He said there's a big community in Dubai. So we try to do this, and I got to do more of this, which is we used to go and do like weekly or bi-weekly things here in Puerto Rico, San Juan Smokehouse, drinks, and I would buy the first round of shots and things like that. I got to get back to that. That is fun. And then, but now what we've been doing lately is we work with a local pet shelter, where on Sundays we just walk the shelter dogs. So that's just like some kind of way that we give back. That's a nice thing that we try to do. The second thing that we're trying to do here as a community is, and I talked to Ben about this, is we used to do a lot of live streams and people were happy and live streams and talk, and it was like people would talk back and forth. I don't do as much of those anymore because I got really busy with other things. I think what we're gonna do is do a community outside of YouTube, and I'm gonna share that with everybody who has come to the website, which is 100% free. When they signed up, I will give you guys information about what we're going to do as far as building it outside on another platform. And then the third thing is, this is not financial advice, but me and a couple of people I know, we bought the IP rights to Flappy Bird, and we'll be launching that on Web3. So that'll be a bigger thing down the road, but that's something that's going to be a while. So that's it. That's what we got going
And I'd
on.
like to hear a lot more about that, maybe for a different time, but
yeah,
really
Flappy Bird it's a goofy game, but people love it for some reason.
I know. I feel like it was making quite the rounds like a couple years ago or a few years ago, I think. It seemed like everyone was playing it. We have a few questions. It seems like you have pretty good, your guy, you're mentioning about starting a new channel on TA. It seems like people are liking that idea.
Oh, that's good.
Someone says TA on stablecoins would be interesting. So maybe you know, if maybe the whole idea is we are trying to get a return on stablecoins. You know, buying at 1002 and selling at 1003 or something, right? But no,
Yeah.
I mean, it does seem like there's just, you know, support for, you know, for other idea, you know, to a new channel, guys. So, I mean, I think that was a good idea. Someone did ask where your intros about non-financial advice went in your videos.
Ah, yes, that's a good question. Well, I've seen a few people in the past speculate that I just ran out of rhymes for, you know, things like advisor and financial. No, well, in short, we were just trying to make the videos a bit shorter. I think people did enjoy the sort of me dressing up or doing it in rhyme at the beginning, and I must say I did as well. I did find that I was spending an inordinate amount of time trying to think up a rhyme for it, or trying to find a costume to dress up as so-and-so to do it. And it did get to the point where I was like, this is all time I could spend researching either what I'm talking about in the video or something else. So there was that. But yeah, we just kind of tried to make the videos a little bit shorter. Because I think people, I'm not going to say people have limited attention spans because many of them don't, but I think people do have, time is the greatest commodity, isn't it? And we just felt if we can just get that get that information across. People know it's not financial advice, or at least I hope they do. So yeah, I did resurrect it recently. I found a curly wig and a cucumber and a prison jumpsuit. So I did SBF. I couldn't quite nail the voice, unfortunately. So, but yeah, maybe in the bull market, then when people are more inclined to watch a half-hour video again, perhaps. But yeah, no, we just wanted to make them shorter and snappier, really.
All right, yeah. I mean, it seems like a fair response, and coming up with rhymes constantly would kind of probably get cumbersome.
It's not easy.
I did see that one guy, the one with the orange jumpsuit and an SPF, and I think you nailed the voice pretty well. It was pretty funny.
Oh really? Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I was listening to him a lot. He has a funny way of saying oh, or is that oh no? So no. There was no commingling. Yeah, it was. I spent far too. That took up so much time. I could have put together a whole different video in the time that it took me to try and analyze SBF's voice. So there you are. That's that's it in a nutshell.
We have more questions, and we actually did finish a little early today, so we actually have time to go through some more of these questions. Someone is asking, what do you think would happen to the altcoin market if they're labeled securities?
Oh, I think we talked about this before, me and Guy. I think it takes this big, trajectory down, but then people realize, the smart people go, well, was there a hack? Was there a double spend? Was there something fundamentally different with the protocols? And they realize, oh, that's just, I buy securities all the time on Robinhood. So what's the difference?
Yeah, I feel like I buy securities all the time, and I'm like, I don't think about it being a bad thing, but
yeah. I think there'll be a period of kind of flapping around and concern and prices dropping and stuff, and then people will figure out how to register these things. And I think long term it could be good, because I think projects that don't have strong fundamentals, that were never going to be anything to begin with, will get shaken out, and the cream will rise to the top.
Yeah.
Someone is asking, what will be the narrative for the next bull run, right? And want to separate, like, I mean, right now Bitcoin's at what, 24.5K or so, but what's the narrative that gets Bitcoin to 100K? Like, what's that narrative? And what do you think will be the narrative? And also, I mean, I guess not just Bitcoin, but Ethereum. What's the narrative that gets Ethereum to 10K, right? Or the altcoin market up 10x from where it is today? What narrative do you see taking crypto sort of the new paradigm shift?
Guy, Guy's got that one.
Lots of potential ones. I think for the sort of wider crypto market beyond Bitcoin and Ethereum, I think perhaps something like a killer app. So people ask me what the killer app is going to be, and I always say, if I knew, I'd be off building it.
Right.
So I really have no idea, but I think, again, as I've said before, I think we're so close to the beginning of the journey in what crypto can do, and what the people working in crypto are capable of doing. So I think we could see a killer app come and really sort of supercharge maybe one particular sector. Maybe something like GameFi, or dare I say it, the metaverse. I think perhaps another catalyst for a bull market, it could be something more mundane. I think it could be something like CBDCs getting rolled out, and people realize it, because I know I rabbit on about CBDCs all the time, and all the kind of terrible things that governments can do with them, the potential implications. Maybe that won't be the case, but I think all it will really take is a big economy rolling out a CBDC, rolling out one of these central bank currencies, and it having kind of insane limitations on how much you can spend or where you can spend it, and people just suddenly seeing it, because it's all very well people like us talking about and saying, hey, these could be, they'll make them seem convenient, but they won't be good. But that won't count for anything until people actually see it. So I do wonder whether we could see something like that, and people going, do you know what? I need to get to something that isn't this. I need to get into Bitcoin. Now is the time before it's too late. So yeah, I think it could be. I'd like to think it was a killer app or something really exciting, but it could be something kind of mundane and a bit crappy.
Yeah, makes sense. Like, I think it all comes down to pain, right? Pain's the best teacher of all time. I think we've been here for quite some time. The class of 2021, 2022, they got their teeth kicked in with the FTX, the Voyager, the Celsius, the BlockFis. How many of those people are going to I trust exchanges 100%? I think, and if you get those pain points with the CBDCs, maybe that would be a good narrative. I think the other one would be just a little clarity, not shutting everything down, but just going, okay, this is what it is. We're going to, meet in the middle. And I don't know, maybe they get some regulation and become there was this term that Simon used, virtual asset service provider. I've heard to talk about that from the FATF, Financial Asset Task Force. And if they can just, because what the rest of the world is going, okay, we're not going to shoehorn everything into the old Howey test and securities. We're going to make a different subdivision, maybe something like that. But who knows?
I would say utility. So, I mean, that's basically what Guy said too, is just some type of, app or something provides utility. But I mean, I think the obvious answer, and the one that is the most boring or around sort of it's not specific to crypto, is just the money printer turning back on is probably, as sad as it is, if you look at Bitcoin's price divided by the money supply, it's basically just been sideways since late 2016, early 2017. So yes, Bitcoin, even though Bitcoin went on a massive bull run, to 69K, as a function of the money supply, it's basically just been range bound. And so and take a look at the S&P divided by the money supply. I mean, it's depressing, right? It can be somewhat depressing, because it does kind of show you that one of the reasons that asset prices go up is just because there's more money in circulation. It's the cold hard truth, right? And that's why one of the reasons you invest, I suppose, just try to keep up, with inflation. And you kind of have to, because otherwise everything's just going to get devalued. But yeah, it's kind of a more important. And then of course we have the Bitcoin halving coming up in 2024, which it always provides a decent narrative, at least to get things moving. So maybe that'll get things moving, and then the money printer will keep that move sustained. Let me see. Let's get maybe one more question, and then we'll wrap it up. There are any more questions?
Ben bringing it down, being the wet blanket for the for the cryptoverse.
No, but I mean, it's true. But it's true. I look at you look at the S&P divided by M2, or Bitcoin divided by M2, and it's like what are we even doing here? It's just going everything's just going sideways forever, basically. I mean, Bitcoin wasn't going sideways forever against M2. It was basically since 2017 it has been. It's basically just been going sideways. But the S&P compared to M2, just decades, I think, of just So I mean, again, it's almost like you're forced to invest just so you can keep up with all the dollars that are being printed.
Ben, all Lambos and moons. That's all you got to remember, and just put that on your thumbnails and your titles. Only positive.
Yeah.
Reminding us all, Ben, that after everything we've been through, we just keep making the same mistakes over and over again.
This is true.
As human beings, we essentially learn nothing.
Yeah, well, they'll eventually turn the money printer back on, in due course. Probably sometime early next year or something. Once they've sufficiently wrecked everyone, then they'll be forced to. But I think we still have some. I mean, asset markets right now are doing fine. So the Fed has the green light to keep doing what they're doing. I mean, they sort of had the green light. So,
This is true.
yeah. So
Does anyone remember when Jerome Powell's term is up? He's
I don't know.
because I just wonder whether, if he wins the battle on inflation, will he want to stop there and be, Paul Volcker Part 2?
But he was just reappointed.
And sort of walk off into the sunset, or will he want to turn the money printer on, give us all a last rush of endorphins before he sidles out the door?
It's in
It's
2026.
all on Jerome.
2026, I believe, is because he just was reappointed in 2022.
So you got 4 years.
2026.
Yeah, so it's a 4-year thing. Yeah.
That's
Okay.
perfect timing.
So-
yeah.
So that's
That's
where
the same year.
That's where the Bitcoin 4-year cycle comes from. Just the Federal Reserve.
See, perfect. No, he should.
Isn't that when,
just walk off?
Isn't that when Gary Gensler's term ends as well? 2026.
I hope it's sooner. Is he still here?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think it's 2026 we've got Gary to. I don't think Gary's going anywhere, unfortunately. So 2026 could be big.
I feel like once upon a time people were optimistic about Gary, because of his experience in crypto, but then now everyone is not as optimistic. And that video that he put out, I think that video that he put out, while it does seem kind of cringe, I think to a lot of us who are more like really hardcore crypto fanatics, I imagine a lot of people, it probably was able to capture their attention and entertain them, which is probably arguably the target audience that he's going after anyways. I mean, the target audience is clearly not people that have been doing this for a long time and, kind of know the ins and or the do's and don'ts of crypto.
Yeah.
But yeah, all right. I think I
applaud the effort, just not the execution.
Yeah.
The execution was awful.
Yeah, the proof of stake narrative, that was getting old, I think. He could have done it half as much.
Did you see the next one with groundskeeper Willie from The Simpsons? Oh, that one's.
I haven't seen that one.
It's an immediate classic for Gary Gensler. You should all check it out. Grab the popcorn.
See, look, he's doing what he needs to do.
Did you see it's called?
He's getting us to talk about it.
See, exactly. This guy's a genius.
He's light years ahead of all of us. Did you see he called it Office Hours with Gary Gensler?
Yeah.
That's what came up at the beginning.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then he did that, and he said, and he talks about crypto, not your keys, not your crypto. I'm like, sweet Mary and Joseph, even the SEC chair can do it, and we get it wrong.
I do wonder if he just kind of like sits and like listens to us all bicker about what he's doing and just kind of laughs, like all these guys are just clueless,
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure he watches the channel.
I'm not saying my channel, but I mean, you have to imagine that he's at least somewhat in tune with various outlets various news. Probably Coin Bureau's channel, he covers everything. But I'm saying he's probably more in tune to a lot of this stuff than we might think he is, and I'm sure he sees us talking about what he's doing. But all right, I think we should
Gary,
wrap it up.
if you're watching,
yeah,
no hard feelings.
I think we should wrap it up. We've been going over time, but I thank you guys for coming. I meant to say this at the beginning, but if you guys are not subscribed to Guy and Rob, the links to their channels are down in the description below, so make sure you subscribe to them. Next Thursday, we'll do NFA Live on Rob's channel, so that's where it will be next week. It always seems to be Rob always is a very popular host, I think. I always see like the most positive comments when Rob's hosting. Not to say that they're negative when it's not, but just I've seen that a lot. So next week, Rob's channel.
Yeah,
likewise.
And we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Adios.